You are now tuned in to the Project 365 experience.
Because this is going to be really good. It's a very exciting episode for me. It's a very fun time. I get to welcome the new head coach at Laurentian University, Brendan Edwards. Brendan Edwards, how like when I say those words, like does it even register? Like, or is it still fresh?
It's definitely still a little bit fresh for me. It's been an unconventional summer for sure. Just
Uh-huh.
getting the job in June. So obviously a bit of a late start. And then, as you know, I was at Brock, and so our head coach at Brock, Willie, was actually working with the Canadian national team with the U16s, and so I'd already been announced as the head coach at Laurentian. We were just wrapping up stuff with Brock because he was out of town with his responsibilities with Canada. So I was trying to split my head between my new position while still holding down the fort, so to speak, at Brock for a couple of weeks
Mm.
until Willie got back. So there was no like gradual transition. It was really just like doing two things for a small period of time at the exact same time. So it's like I was up here during the daytime, and then I would go back to Brock for a couple of days a week. And so it was kind of weird to just be in two separate gyms for but it was a small period of time when we were able to do that. But to your question, just kind of like how does it sound to be here? It sounds great. It's definitely been
Uh-huh.
I'm not gonna say, and I'm sure we'll dive into it, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it was necessarily something that I was moving towards intentionally.
Mm.
But as my career kind of evolved and went along, it became clear that there was a really good chance that one day a door like this would open and that I'd have to make a decision, right, if I wanted to go this way or not. So,
I
but it
wanna
sounds good.
yeah, yeah, it does. It does for sure. I wanna kind of get into how you got into coaching because we talked a little bit before and it was like, okay, you were teaching, right? And just in terms of education and all that kind of stuff, it's like it's stable, but then what was the moment that click where you're like, you know what, let me give this a shot?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was really, I got to give a lot of credit to my dad for that one because I was teaching high school in Quebec at the time. I was a full-time teacher. I was coaching club basketball in Ottawa, so like rep basketball. I was coaching CEGEP at the local Heritage College, which
Hmm.
is a CEGEP in my region. I was also working with Canada Top Flight Academy with a prep school, so I had my hand in like a lot of different ventures all at the same time. And prior to all of that, I had coached at just my high school that I was
Hmm.
teaching at, right? Like just as many teachers do, you jump into coaching and somebody asks you, hey, do you want to take on the senior boys basketball team kind of thing?
Yeah.
And at the time, I mean, obviously I took to it and I enjoyed it, but it was never part of my plan. I never said my whole life, I was gonna become a coach. It kind of found me. And I remember having a conversation with my dad, maybe, oh geez, I want to say like 3 or 4 years into coaching. This was back in 2012 or 13 now, about 10 years ago. And because I was doing so much coaching, my dad kind of sat me down one time at his place and he just said to me, he goes, there's gonna come a day where you're going to have to decide if you want to coach or if you want to teach. And he was the first one to really say that. Like I was just coaching and not really thinking about how much time I was spending doing it. I just enjoyed it. And he was the one that said like, hey, you're not really normal when it comes to this. Like
Right.
you definitely have a passion for it. And from the feedback that you're getting from players, your school, families, the way people interact with you, clearly you care and you're passionate about it and you're probably are okay at it. So he's
Mhm.
like, maybe at some point, man, you're gonna have to make a decision if teaching is the route, or if it's basketball. So when he said that to me, and that was like 10 years ago, I kind of brushed it off, but it always stayed in the back of my mind. And I said, huh, what if that happened? What if one day I kind of did this basketball thing and kept doing it to a certain level, getting better at it, growing and developing and seeking out opportunities? I say, you know what? Maybe he's right. Maybe one day I will have to make that decision. So, fast forward 10 years later, well, not really, more like 5 years later, and the decision was laid before me where, I was teaching full time, I was coaching multiple teams, but the opportunity to apply to become the lead assistant at Brock opened up. Willie was just hired at Brock at the time. I knew Willie from Ottawa, and he said, "Hey, man, I know you applied for this." And he goes, "I think you might be the right fit. You have a lot of head coaching experience, obviously not at this level, but he goes, you come very well respected. And like I've asked around, and a lot of people said that you're just a loyal, reliable, hardworking dude. So let's kind of see where this goes." I don't think at the time Willie necessarily had an idea in mind that I was gonna move into this position where I now have my own program. At the time, that was not my ambition or motivation either. I was just ready for a change, to be honest. I was ready to get out of the teaching lifestyle and transition into basketball, even just for 1 year. And then COVID hit, and that was a crazy time. I had just left my teaching job, which is one of the most secure jobs you can
in
have.
Canada. Yes,
and during COVID, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they all kept their jobs. I mean, it was very difficult on teachers because they had to move online. So I kind of missed that, which I'm not gonna.
It's like everybody was trying to stay stable. You said, "Nah, I don't."
No, man, I went the complete other way, and trust me, I had some moments during COVID that next year when we lost our season, because I made the call and said, you know what, I think I'm gonna pursue this basketball thing for a little while longer. I made the call to my school board, told them what was going on. They were sad to see me go, but they supported me. And a lot of people that had seen me teaching for 10 years and seen me kind of coaching knew that I was always leaning more towards the coaching side of things, like naturally. Like that's just, they said that they all envisioned me going that way.
Right.
I didn't personally look at it that way, but it always seems like everybody else from the outside looking in were the ones that kept like pushing me in that direction, saying, "Hey man, like that, I think that's the calling for you." Right. So it's kind of a weird one. It's unconventional, right? Like, it's not like I attacked it. It's not like it was an intentional thing. And I'm sure some people will hear that and call BS on me or say like, people want these positions so badly. I feel extremely grateful, and I know how fortunate I am because there's only one of 48 jobs in the country. So I understand how fortunate I am to be able to coach full time. But I think because it was not something I was chasing like relentlessly, it was more something that evolved naturally. I think sometimes that's the best way that things happen in life, right? Like I think that you're not so focused on the thing you're chasing. I think sometimes you're just staying present. I loved coaching at the high school level, so I did that with everything I had. I loved coaching club basketball, so I did that with all out focus. Same with Heritage, same with CTA, same with Brock. And if you just like embrace where you are and you put sort of like, we always say like 10 toes down, and you just stay present and locked in on what it is that you're doing, well, then I think you're actually living your life and you're not always thinking about the future.
Right.
And it's kind of amazing what happens when you just sort of stay in the moment. And I think that I was given some really good advice along the way throughout my coaching journey. And then when the door kind of opened and there was an opportunity here at Laurentian, I think I was ready. And I know I'm ready. I mean, no one's really ready. Let's be honest. Everybody jumps into this coaching. And like, you can be as ready as you think you are. But at the end of the day, until you're sitting in this seat, that's when you really start to learn, I think, not what the job is, but just there's no coach's manual for how you're supposed to take over a program. But I think I know we're going to be talking today about culture. I think it's a great topic because it's a bit open-ended, because there's no one size fits all approach to how somebody goes about establishing a culture within their program. I think we'll have a good conversation about that.
For sure.
Unless everything I say is complete nonsense.
For sure. Literally, we could end the episode right here. I don't think you understand. I got goosebumps, man. I don't even think like people can see it. Like just hearing you talk about it, and it's like it's weird to say, and I don't know if you could kind of like understand where I'm coming from, but I got the chance to just first see you firsthand when I coached against you when you were at Heritage.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that experience, because staying in the moment, I honestly, from the outside, it felt like if you stayed there, you would have been good, because you really, I felt the joy that you were having while you were coaching those games. It's weird to say, but I don't even know if I'm making any sense.
No, I get what you're saying, and it's funny because my brother, Justin, who still coaches at Heritage. When I left, he still stayed on. He always coached with me. He's my older brother. You know, we still chat about, you know, just kind of like the love of being a part of building, right? Like I think that's what it comes from. I think like how you're raised and like who you surround yourself with growing up kind of like shapes how you are. And so like I'm the youngest of three brothers, right? So like I had two older brothers that kind of like taught me and showed me what to do and what not to do. And one of the things that I think I learned from both of my brothers, both Justin and
Mhm.
Steven, was like, hey man, if you're gonna do something, do it properly.
Mhm.
Like stop wasting your time. Like my brother said something really profound to me one time, my brother Justin. Um, I was just out of university. I was just kind of like figuring out what I was gonna do in terms of work, like so many students do, right? It's a long time ago now, um, but it's one of those things where I remember him saying something to me about like a job one time, or I think like it was about a job, but at the same time I was trying to like eat cleaner and like devote my attention into my fitness and all that kind of stuff at the time. And I remember him telling me, you know, it only takes 21 days to change a habit, right? For human beings to go through their process to rewire their brain, it only takes about 21 days. So 3 weeks for a human to really form a new habit or to break an old habit. And he said, he's pretty intense, but he said to me, he goes, B, he's like, if you can't do something for 21 consecutive days in a row and commit to something for just 21 days of your entire life, he
Mhm.
goes, what's the point of being alive? Like
Mhm.
you have no control, you have
Right.
zero control.
The discipline. Yep.
And he
Yep.
goes, so what's the point of being alive? So I share that with you to say at Heritage, I think the reason why I enjoyed it so much is that I kind of adopt that mentality is if you can't do something all out while you're doing it, then what's the point of being there? What's the point of being a part of it? I think that sometimes if you set your sights on the things that are coming down the road, it's always great to plan. It's always great to plan. But I think if that's where your mind goes and your energy is focused into the majority of the time, man, you're not, what's the point of living? And like
Mhm.
my brother said that to me. So like whether it was high school, club, heritage, like wherever I was, I never thought about the next thing. It was always just about how good of a job can I do right now? Because I don't know. Again, it's hard for me to explain because I don't know why I am the way that I am and why I
Yeah.
think that. And I have bad days. Trust me, like I'm a planner. Like as a coach, you have to
Right.
be looking down the road. So, but there's a difference between planning and then there's a difference between like dreaming or daydreaming or getting distracted by things. It's completely different. You
Right.
can be organized in your thought process for the next 12 months, but if all you're thinking about is I can't wait for 12 months from now, then you're going to miss so many things. So Heritage was a great opportunity for me, um,
Because that
because
season, that season. Sorry to cut you off, but that season, like you're going into it, but that season, like I don't think people realize how legendary, just from the outside perspective, that was. For people that don't know, Heritage was relegated. It was a CJEP D2, right? So CJEP D2, that's the equivalent of JUCO, right? Kind of JUCO a little bit, JUCO prep, relegated to the second division. You guys end up going up one division, and then you go undefeated. Like in the span of like literally from what I saw, literally 2 years. The
yeah.
turnaround was so quick. Like, what was the keys to those to the quick turnaround?
So again, it fits well, I think, with what we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
today. So a lot of people don't know this, but like I took over that program years before that, right? Like I was there from 2014 until 2019, and everybody only remembers kind of the end of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the program that I inherited at Heritage at the time, the year before I got there, they had been relegated back to the Division 2,
Division two. Mm-hmm.
right? And the year before that, they were 1-17 in the top division. So they had a really bad year and they got relegated. And then they had one year where they were relegated and they went 8-8. And that was the team I inherited. So the next year, so they were 8-8, and then I came in. When I came in, the program lacked direction. And I don't think that was the fault of the previous coach or anybody in the past. I just don't know that people understood what heritage was. it was a small English cégep in a predominantly French-speaking province where the expectations for what they could be was very low. And I think that people just kind of leaned into the low expectations, low results mentality. And so when I went in there, I essentially just said, the first thing I want to do is I want this to be a place where people want to be, right?
Mhm.
And nobody wants to be in Division Two Seja. And I
Yeah.
realized
Yeah.
no one wants to be there
Yeah.
because clearly if you're there, it means that you weren't good enough to be in a higher division, or B, circumstances in life, no one saw you, no one recruited you, whatever the case may be, but no one really wanted to be there. And I think that once you accept that reality and you embrace that reality and you change the mentality of, okay, we're here now and let's be present in where we are, I think that's where it changed. But that took me 3 years to do. And so my first year, we were 11-5. The second year, I think we were 15-4. And then the last year, I think we were similar, like 15-4. And we had made the playoffs every single year, but we had lost in what's known as like the barrage game, which
Yeah.
is the lower teams play the better teams.
Yeah.
Right?
Kind of like the equivalent of the play-in.
That's
Let's
right.
have a play-in to get into the playoffs. Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
exactly it, right? So we had that game 3 times in a row, and all 3 times we were knocking at the door, like, but we lost, right? We lost every single time. And so after that third time in a row of losing, um, I'll be honest with you, man. Like I had some not some doubts about myself, but more so doubts about culture is culture, right? And you can fix things, but ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to run into a wall, and then you're going to start to question whether the things you're doing are the right things, or more importantly, whether they work.
Right.
And what I was faced with was I had to look myself in the mirror and say, what you're doing is good, but it's not good enough. And when I came to that realization, I kind of put my focus into like overdrive, man. Like I really turned it up a gear. And what I did was I said, you want to know what Heritage has never done? We've never actually recruited. And and people kind of like frown when they say that, like, well, no, of course you recruited. You went to high schools, you recruited kids. Yes, but I think one of the big things about Heritage that made it very unique, and I'm not afraid to say this, is that as an English speaking Seja, we're very limited in our ability to land English talent on the Quebec side.
Mhm.
However, given its geographical location, where it's literally 5 minutes from Ottawa across
Mhm.
the bridge
The
into
bridge. Mhm.
right, it's like there's essentially an untapped market of talented student athletes who ultimately don't all get recruited to university out of high school. They don't get recruited to OCAA schools, which is the only system they would know being in Ontario. And so it's like, why don't I go and start expanding the network over to that side? And so that's what I did. And that was a really unique year, that last year, where we kind of came out of nowhere in the eyes of many.
Mhm.
And I think that was because that was a very, very cool year where I think we had 9 guys on the roster. We started
That
the year with 13,
yeah. It
but
felt like you guys were like 8 deep, just beating everybody.
and that's kind of what it turned into, right? Is it was a very unique team. All 5 starters were from outside of the province of Quebec, and I don't think that's ever been done before in any
Mhm.
level of Asia, which was really unique. We had a kid from New Brunswick and 4 kids from Ontario, and that team was really special, with a lot of really special guys that really embraced that, and I really always try to thank them for putting their faith and their trust into me. I mean, from that group, we had 2 guys go on and play post-secondary. All 5 of them very easily could have. But the timing, I think, of me leaving and then COVID hitting, because people forget, and this is big on, and I don't want to jump, but
Hit.
I think
Yep.
the most proud piece that I have of my time at Heritage is not winning the championship and not going undefeated and all that. My most proud moment was when I had left and gone to Brock to become the lead assistant there. I think the definition of the culture that you create is not what you do when you're there, but what you leave behind.
Mhm.
If a program can continue its level of, success or excellence, whatever you want to call it, even if the coach leaves, that's when you made an impact. And what made me most proud was when I left the next year's team had moved up to the higher division, and they finished the year in first place. I think they were whatever 16-2,
And then
and they
COVID hit.
and then COVID hit, and they were
Yes. Yes.
and I mean, me a little bit. Like I'm
Yeah.
not a big um I'm not like a big booster. Like I don't talk a lot of like nonsense. So you know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very like low key with that stuff. But my thing is, like, that year's team had more talent than the team before. And I'm very confident that that year's group was going to go and do just as well. The undefeated thing is the undefeated thing, but like that year's group was so deep with talent. They had guys that were, generating interest from multiple youth sports schools, and then COVID hit. So that was really proud for me that even once I had left, because of the success and the culture of the program, we were able to continue recruiting the next year. Again, we had 5 kids from out of province. We only had 3 guys return from the previous year's team, but the group itself had expanded, and word got out that we were kind of doing something very unique, and that guys were going to get opportunities if they were good enough. And that was probably my most proud thing, man, as I left it, and it kind of like took off. It even got better. And even this year, right? You look post-COVID,
Right.
4 or 5 years later, I mean, they still qualified for provincials this year. They were a top 4 team. So it sustained itself, right? So that's the thing that I'm most proud of, is that I think the group, we put them on the map, so to speak. And then since then, I think they've stayed somewhat, they've stayed relevant, and they've maintained a respectable, stature amongst Quebec basketball. And I think that that's the true sign of like establishing a culture.
For sure, for sure. And like, so that experience catapults you into being the lead assistant at Brock, right? And now you're in this situation where you went from assistant to now you're going to head coach. Transitioning, combining those 3 years, now you're in this situation right now, being the head coach. What did you learn from being the head coach at, let's say, a lower level, being the lead assistant at the university level, and now being able to, like, what are you going to apply now to your level?
Well, this is kind of one of the nice things about the idea of like staying present, right? And getting lost in what you're doing, is because I did that, I don't think I skipped any steps, and I didn't miss
Right.
any reps. So I actually have a lot more coaching experience as a head coach than I ever did as an assistant. I was mostly a head coach my entire life, like whether it was high school, whether it was club, whether it was CEGEP, whether it was, right? So like I always was the person that was leading the program. And really the first time I ever was a real assistant coach was at the university level. And, again, I credit Willie Manigat so much, because not only is he now one of my absolute closest and best friends, which is tough in this industry, right? To have real friends. But like he was also a great man at empowering me. And what I mean by that is, like, from day one, he had no reason to do this, and it speaks to his leadership style and what a great leader he is, and that's why he does great things at Brock. But he said to me, he goes, "Hey man, I'm bringing you in here, and I hope you understand you're building this with me every step of the way." So Willie allowed me. I sat in on every administrative meeting, every coaches meeting with the athletic director and the entire administration. If there was any type of meeting that revolved around budget, finance, alumni relations, donorship, fundraising, everything, I sat in on every meeting, and he always wanted me there because he said, "Brandon, you have head coaching experience. More importantly, you have life experience as a teacher. So I know you understand how to sit and be in a room and understand sort of the message, and then the real message, understanding, right, politics, understanding democracy, understanding bureaucracy, like all of those things that are so important when you work and represent a program and you're establishing something." He's like, "Man, you bring something very unique to the table." And he goes, like, "I just value your opinion." So because I was there for those years with him, and I truly was fortunate to sit in on every single aspect, I got to give him a lot of the credit, because coming into this position, I know what the job is. Like I knew it. I watched it literally from when he started at his position. I was there every step of the way, all the way through to where it is now at Brock. And so like it's kind of like Groundhog's Day. Like it's like deja vu. Like I just did this. I just did it with him, obviously as his assistant. So it's complete. And I will say this, make no mistake about it, he gave me those opportunities, but I understand now better than ever before, there is such a significant difference in the 6 inches from the assistant coach's chair to the head coaching chair. And I'll give Willie so much credit, and I take that with me proudly, is like, he's a good leader, man. He had no reason to bring me on board
That's my guy. That's my guy.
He had no reason to do it. but he did, because he said to me, "Hey man, I think you're a head coach in the making." He goes, and he literally said that to me. He's like, "Give me a few years with you, and I think you're gonna be right there, and you'll get your own program."
Mm-hmm.
And now again, I that was not the plan. Like I think he's just a good recruiter. Like I think he was just saying. I think he's just
He's good at a lot of things for sure. Really approachable. Really, I love him. Love him. Yeah.
but no, but that's it. No, so that, I'm in this new position. But I will say this, specific to your question about like how do all the old experiences kind of like set me up for success, maybe in this one. Um, I've done a lot with a lot less. It's not like
Right.
I had a lot of
Right.
support.
So now you got the
Like,
resources. Oh, yeah,
so
that's
so
crazy.
so
Yeah.
so it's like, I was always splitting my brain. Like I was teaching 8 hours a day and then going and running 3 practices, right? And what I found now is that sometimes you almost have to just understand, like, I don't have to be anywhere else. Like I'm here and I'm present. And so, even my new players have noticed, they're like, "Coach, you're always here like every morning." Like it's summertime and they're like, "We come in and you're in the office. Like, why are you here?" Like, you know what I mean? Like we train at
Yeah.
nighttime. You're here.
Yeah.
It's like it's the job. I come from a background of you clock in, you clock out. I don't know how else to be. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
you got to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's always lots to do, man.
For sure. For sure. So like now, so again, going back to building a culture and all that kind of stuff, like what do you say are, let's say, the main components when you recruit and when you're trying to get new players on board or what you're about to do? Like, how do you instill that?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So are you asking what am I looking for in terms of recruits, or as I
Just
establish my
not,
culture?
yeah, just in terms of like the people you want to represent what you're about, you
No,
know?
I got you. Yeah, no, I mean, it's really, man, basketball's really not complicated.
I know, I know.
And just like, but it's complex. And that's the difference. There's a difference between complicated and complex, in
Hmm.
my opinion, right? Complicated is like, what's the best like, something complicated is like, okay, if I want to fly a plane, that's complicated,
Right.
right? But anyone can do it if you follow these steps. There's a protocol, and you'll get like if you train and you follow this step. It's complicated, but it's not complex. Follow the rules, follow the procedures. You can fly a plane, right?
Hmm.
That's why people do it. Coaching is complex, and it's complex
Right.
because you're dealing with human beings.
Right.
It's not a plane that you're maneuvering and pulling. You're dealing with people's psychology. You're dealing with people's motivations. Human behavior and psychology makes things complex because there's a
Right.
million different things that go into what makes someone tick. So when I'm looking at who I'd like to bring in and what I'm trying to establish, I make no mistake about it. Like basketball is not a difficult thing. The most
Mhm.
difficult thing they're ever going to experience in their life is life. And so I'm trying to bring people in that understand that basketball is just a part of their life, but it better be very important to them because it has the opportunity to teach them everything they're ever going to need to know about the next chapter of their life. Use basketball as your training grounds to set you up for success down the line, whether that's understanding commitment, discipline, starting and finishing something, starting a degree through trial and tribulation, finish it.
Right.
Uh, Dealing with different personalities, dealing with failure, understanding that your identity isn't being attacked all the time. Like all of these things, if that makes sense to a young student athlete and they truly believe that I'm going to help them learn about how to have success in life, those are types of people I can work with. The problem is, and this is what makes it tricky, is just like anything else in life, man. Recruiting, that's like the job interview. And everybody can do well in a job interview. And you hire the person because they answered every question perfectly. And you're like, you know what? I really like this person. And then they're on the job. And then 3 months into the job, they're late. They suck at their job. They never
Right.
meet deadlines. They
Right.
don't do. And then you realize, yo, that guy conned me. Like he interviewed really well, but this guy, I got to fire this guy. It's the same thing in recruiting. Some kids can really, I shouldn't call them kids, but like young
Yeah.
men, they will present really, really well during the recruiting phase. And then they're underneath your roof and it's a completely different story.
Right.
And
It's
so
kind of
what
like
I'm
it's kind of like going back to what Justin, your brother Justin, was saying about the habits, right? Like if you're not willing, either you're not willing to change those habits, while you're in and committing to it, your true colors are going to show. Or even like you said, sometimes it's just a phase of wanting something new. It's a stimulus, right? We're wanting something new. You think you want this, but you don't really know until you're actually in there.
That's exactly it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you hit it on the head. Like, you don't know until you're there every day. So from a cultural standpoint, what I'm trying to bring in, it's not complicated. I want people who are honest. I want people that are tough, and I want people that are really smart. And I always say that, like, be smart. Like, it goes a long way. And I think every kid is and young man is like smart. I mean, if you graduate high school, there's like book smart, right? Not everybody excels academically. But if you're like somebody who cares about being smart, like it matters to you to be smart or intelligent, whatever word you want to use, the reality is I can do something with you. But if you don't care about that stuff, and like
Mm-hmm.
you don't walk into a room and like analyze what's going on and be able to process things, and it doesn't matter to you, it's so hard to like make you better at something or help you get better at something, because you just don't care enough. Like, you're not aware. And I mean, if you listen, like, one of the great things nowadays is like listen to podcasts of these NBA players,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
the thing that I think a lot of young student athletes aren't paying close enough attention to. The content is great. Listening to Draymond, Paul George, JJ
Right.
Redick, like, all the content is fantastic, right? Even Gilbert Arenas' stuff has been great, legendary for years.
He's my favorite.
He's the best, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, the thing that people miss though is how intelligent these guys are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, their perspective, their ability to analyze things, their ability to sift through the nonsense and to get like intelligence and being smart is not valued enough. And I will always go, if two players are talented, I'll always go with the smarter guy between the two.
Mm-hmm.
If two guys are talented, I'll always take the intelligence. Everybody be like, yeah, dummy, of course you would. Like, why wouldn't you? Right? No, but that's the thing is, okay, even if somebody might be a little bit less talented, marginally, like, you can't suck at basketball and expect to be good at it. But if you're both talented, but maybe a little bit less, I'll always go with the guy who takes a little bit more, a certain level of seriousness to his intelligence, because, well, I got to spend time with you for 4 straight years, man, every day. We're gonna have to spend so much time on the bus, in the hotel, in practice, in film, in between classes, meetings. I can't relate to somebody who just doesn't care about how they're being perceived. Like,
Right.
you want to be intelligent or not be intelligent? That's what makes humans humans. That's what separates us from every other species, is our
Right.
ability to take
Yeah.
pride in that.
Take pride, innovate, be creative.
So like, why can't, so from a cultural perspective, just to put a button on that one, it's like, I look for, that's like the most important thing to me is the smart, intelligent people that obviously are gifted at basketball, whether it's physical dimensions, whether it's pure skill, whatever it is, the talent that they have. Once I start looking into their eyes and we have the conversation back and forth and we do chop it up and we go back, if you can carry a conversation with me and I genuinely can understand where you're going with your thoughts and things like that, I can relate to you. And if I can relate to you, then I can really coach you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I look for.
So I think what resonates with me the most is, and I think I kind of got the chance to feel it, is, those words that you use about, um, being intelligent. But I think, like you said, your way of approach is like you highlight intelligence, but everybody doesn't have to be intelligent in the same way,
Not at all.
which I find is so crucial, because I think especially in this kind of different era that we're in, social media and just like constant instant gratification, people tend to compare themselves to others. So there's a way that I think, from what I'm hearing, it's easy to just allow people to just be themselves, but you coach everybody hard, but like you coach everybody differently. And I think like that's potentially could be the key.
And I think I agree with you, and I would add one piece
Mm.
to it. I think what you said is the most important. I'm willing to coach them. I think that's the piece, right? Is it's like, if you bring in guys into your program that don't mesh with your personality, that's okay. But can you coach them?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big piece, right? Like, you can coach people the same, you can coach people differently, but coach them. And like, if somebody doesn't, take like pride, or they don't care enough to want to be coached, because they're like, they don't, again, for me, it's just the way my brain works always. It's like, I always go back to intelligence, or like being smart. A smart person, intelligent person, regardless of how you do in school, how you like your
Right.
knowledge of finances, the market, I don't care what it is. Somebody who cares and they take pride in like their brain, they're like, yo, I'm learning something right now. This matters to me and I'm curious about this. Those are the guys that can be coached, no matter what the message is, no matter how it's delivered, whether it's showing them physically, whether it's showing them on film, whatever it is, you'll find the right methodology to teach them. Some people want to see it, some people want to do it. That piece is whatever. If they don't care about any of that stuff, it means that they don't care enough about being smart and want, like, you spend all this time doing this thing, you might as well get better at it, right? It's the same reason why people who have kids oftentimes raise the second one better than they raise the first one, because they're like, yo man, I don't want to make the same mistakes, because I'm like, this matters to me, like I'm not going to just repeat the
Mhm.
same mistakes. So it's like, and I mean, sometimes they get it wrong on the second one too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
but
That's
but but the thing is like, yeah, you are right though. I'm gonna find out if somebody cares, and if they care and they take, like I said, like pride, or it matters to them that they want to be as intelligent or as smart as they can be. You find the right way to connect with them, you find the right way to teach them, you teach to what their style of learning is, you differentiate your style of coaching. But if you can't coach them because they're just not curious enough and they don't really care enough about it, you're never going to be able to really help somebody get better. And that's what I try to avoid in recruiting. And I know that there's some people that might hear that and say, how are you going to go and say some people don't care? Everyone cares. It's about you to figure out the motive, like figure out how to teach them. And as a former teacher, I can tell you right now, every single kid that came into my classroom when I was a teacher, I tried to teach them. It was my job. I had to try to teach them every single day. And even if they weren't able to get some, you keep going until you figure it out, because it's your responsibility, right? But that person didn't choose to be in your class. You didn't choose that person to be in your class. So you have to ride it out thick and thin. Basketball is different. You get to choose which program you go to. I get to choose who I want in this program. So if we mesh really well, because we both mutually agreed to be here, then it's going to go well. But it only goes well if you're curious, if you want to learn, if you take pride in your intelligence, right? Like it's tough. It's tough otherwise, man. It's tough.
so I have a theory, and if I'm completely wrong in this theory, like please let me know.
Okay.
Okay. So here's my theory. My theory, especially when coaching young players, right? So when I first started coaching, I started coaching grade 5, grade 6. Okay. And I noticed that the joy, I remember like a lot of people, like so when I first started, I go from an elite athlete, I'm coaching young players. So my mindset is we're trying to win right away. We're trying to win. I got the big playbook. Everybody's gonna study this, learn the press, learn this. We're trying to win, right? And I remember somewhere along the way, and it's like it's a fun balance, because when you meet parents at that age, a lot of those kids, they first start sports, and the parents' approach really taught me a lot. Where it was like about, it's not really about the wins right away. At that age, they're trying to kind of fall in love with it, and that's where a lot of kids, based on whether they're going to continue playing basketball or not. Somewhere along the ways where we get older as people, kids get older as athletes and whatnot, the love of playing and the love of being around teammates, the love of creating experiences with the people that I call it the trenches, that we're in the trenches with, somewhere along the way, that supersedes whether I'm a great athlete or not. Because for me, what I really care about is when I look back and I'm going to use your squad, when I look back at my experience at Laurentian University, did I have fun? Did I make friends? Did my coaches teach me how to become a better man? That's kind of like the mindset that I think gets lost at some point. So my theory is that somewhere along those lines, we get so used to telling young players, hey, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, and whatnot. But if we allow them to enjoy the experience, understand that everybody is different, we have the opportunity, and I'm going to say responsibility because I feel really strongly about this, and that's the main reason why I coach. We have the responsibility to make our players' experiences the best experience that they could have. Because the reality is this: not everybody gets the opportunity to be on a team. A lot of people would love to be at Laurentian University. A lot of people. But the reality is not everybody's going to make it. So the select few that I choose to be in this position, if as an adult I can shift my mindset and allow them to understand that, yes, you are chosen, but I understand we have to win, but the big picture is we got to make this experience the best experience that we could have. My idea is just like, it seems that along those lines, adults tend to kind of like break that kid mindset that kids have to have. And that's why you see a lot of people like quit. A lot of people don't like basketball anymore. A lot of people, this is not fun anymore. Coach hates me and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's the communication, right? Between the coach has to communicate that to his players properly. So my theory is just like, either we're not communicating properly or coaches' egos are getting in the way of making this the best experience that they could have. Because this is the funnest game in the world. You know this. This is the funnest game in the world. I think something is missing.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's funny. So I agree with you. And then there's one part I disagree with you on.
Hit me. Yes. I need that.
And this is what it is. So again, right? I also realize that maybe my views are wrong. But I can't, and I'm always willing to change certain views that I have because we're trying to grow and get better, obviously. Like, you just don't want to necessarily stay the same person your whole life. But one thing that I've learned over time is words matter.
Mm-hmm.
The words you say matter. So you just said something really important to me. And it was like, specifically what it was is you had mentioned the fact that like adults, when we get older, when we grow up, you tend to change, right? Like you forget almost like that it's a game. You almost forget, why kids get involved in sports, right? Because I've coached at all kinds of different levels, right? High school, club, prep, CEGEP, even with the CBL, with the Ottawa Blackjacks, right? So I've coached pros. So it's like, my view on it is this. I very rarely have ever met somebody who did not care about winning.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of sports, is that people care about winning. Do they all care to the same extent? Does it matter? Is it life and death for some kids? For sure. Are some kids like they care, and then the moment they leave the gym, they can get over it and they can, right? Especially in this generation because of AAU and its prevalence, which is a great, this is not a knock on AAU. I have no issue with AAU. Well, I do, but we all do. we all do in our own way. But what you'll see is a kid reserve himself and not play as hard as he possibly can because he knows he has 3 games later. And this is a different topic, so I'm not going to stay on this for long. So because they know they have 4 games in a day or 3 games in a day, they're I'll call it like competitive juice. They very quickly lose it after the game. They might get upset that they lost, but like, we played in 3 hours. Like, I can't, what am I going to sit here and stew for 3 hours and be upset? Like, we have another game. So kids are different maybe than mine or your generation because they just play so much basketball now that winning and losing doesn't matter as much as it maybe used to, because if you lost, you didn't get to play again until next weekend. Like there wasn't much basketball.
You get a trophy. You get a trophy too in 4th place.
Right. Well, yeah, it's a different topic. but to your point about like just what's the fine balance? I'll say this: like, kids care about winning. I think as a coach, it's important to instill in somebody a certain sense of pride that winning and losing does matter, whether they're little kids, whether they're older. How you do that, though, will define you as a coach.
I like that.
It's no different than, and I know this is going to be, again, I use extreme examples sometimes.
Hit me. Yep.
No, but you have a kid in a classroom. One kid can read and one kid cannot read. They can't read. One kid can read words and one kid cannot. And you're dealing with both of these kids, just like you would on a basketball team. One kid cares about performing and one kid isn't performing at all, and like they're just behind. Are you just gonna pass up on the kid that can't read? No. You're gonna help that kid learn that reading matters and that is gonna help shape their life down the line. I think that if you can teach kids that winning matters, because it is to some extent the objective of the whole 5 people on the court together. They all want to have fun, but at the end of the day, the objective between having fun and doing it is also to win. Whether that's recreational, you can go into an intramural game, you can go into a co-ed game, there's a scoreboard, there's time, and the whole point of us doing this inside this rectangle is to see who scores more baskets over a period of time. And then at the end, one of us wins and one of us loses.
Right.
That's why winning matters, because that's the point of it. But once you leave the court, I would rather somebody be just super honest with me. Coach, I'm not that crazy about winning. Like, it doesn't define me as a human. If I play well, I'm good to my teammates. I love my teammates. I work hard, but we lose. I'm not going to call myself a loser for the rest of my life. Right? If the intention is to win and the focus is to win, and you do everything in your power to win and you lose, I can live with that. If you don't care about winning and you're like, I don't care, like, why, coach, like, don't put an emphasis on winning. It's about fun the whole time. I would argue with them that they don't understand the spirit of sport to some extent. And I know that makes me, if somebody was listening to this, that you could get some like sports theory person that'd be like, Coach Brandon Edwards is a fool. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But if you really listen to what I'm saying, it's like, I think there's a big lesson that you teach people through, okay, I'm one person on a group of 5 on the court. All 5 of us, if the whole point of us being on here is just everybody individually have fun and then let's have fun together, what was the point afterwards? You could have had fun doing anything. We could have made music. What's the point of people jamming out? Is it a jam session or are you making a song?
Right.
Because if you know your objective, if we're just jamming out and playing music and we're not trying to create music like a song, we're just making music, we're not making a song, well, that's really different. But when we line up against another team and we're playing against another team, we're not playing against ourselves. We're not jamming out to ourselves for the love of what we're doing right now. We're doing something versus someone else. We're trying to make a better song. So to me, it's like, I think that there's a fine balance, but I think to your point, which I think is very important, is I also think, and you'll hear a lot of coaches talk about this now. I mean, anybody that spent any time growing up around somebody like a Dave Smart, right, will learn that, you know, Dave had, I don't even know if it's Dave's thing, to be honest, but I've heard him say it, and I think he's right on this. Like, he's nailed it. He said, sometimes you have to redefine what fun is. Like, fun is a word, but what does that word mean? Because words matter. So fun for somebody and fun for another person could be 2 completely different things.
Right.
Fun could be, I want to get as good at this as possible. To me, growing and getting better at this is fun. And they enjoy that. They get addicted to that feeling. For somebody else, fun could be just showing up and being here and hanging out and laughing. But they have 2 different definitions of what fun is. So the words matter. So it's like, I think you have to find what your definition of fun is. Just like you have to define what your definition of winning is. Winning might not be the scoreboard. My definition of success or winning might be that I have every single guy graduate. And if my guys do that, then we won or we had success. And that is hand on my heart, that is the truth. Because only one team wins a national championship. And it's usually the same 5-6 teams that are competing for it. And a lot of other does that mean every other program is a losing program, that they suck, that they don't take themselves seriously? No, maybe it's because every other program has made very clear what their definition of winning or success is. So maybe they recruit to that type of a personality. I want to bring somebody in who isn't going to define everything in their basketball career as we didn't win a national championship. Maybe some people like, coach, I want a 4-year degree. I want to play ball. I want to have a balanced life. I want to have a social life. I want to be able to kick it with my friends. I want to be able to do the right things. I want to be able to have a full student experience while being an athlete. Well, if that's what your belief is for your program as a coach, then you recruit to that type of personality, and that's success, and that's winning, and that can be
Bingo.
fun,
Bingo, for sure.
right? But if for you it's like, I don't like being in the bottom 5 of the country in terms of wins and losses because you were raised a certain way, your value, the things you attribute to in high performance sport, because at the university level it's high performance sport, and we talked about this before. I fully understand there's only 48 of these programs that compete. To your point, man, people would kill for this opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
No, that's yeah.
So if it's high performance and you're gonna, and you know there's literally hundreds or maybe thousands of guys in grade 12 graduating that would kill for this opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
you better know what you're getting yourself into depending on the program you go to. So for us, for me, I want guys that graduate. For me, success is graduation. For me, the definition of success is somebody who comes in as a person at 18, 19 and who leaves and has confidence. They know exactly who they are as a person. They know what they believe in. They know what their values are, and they can transition to the next phase of life, whether it's being a pro, whether it's being a pro at something else, whether it's, coach, I'm lost in what I want to do next in my life, but I'm confident enough that I have skills and tools that I will figure it out, then that's, for me, that's success.
What's the balance between, like, obviously you're in the new situation, you're bringing in new players. We just talked about winning and redefining like what it is. What is the balance between you want to win now and like okay, let me paint a scenario. Paint a scenario. My mind's going too fast. Let me slow down. So let's say you have really good player doesn't do something that, let's say, is conducive to what you um want to have, like as an example for your program.
Sure.
And you could play this player and just, sweep some things under the rug, and just because he's such a good player and he's going to keep the winning aspect, it gives you a good chance to win.
Yeah.
What's the balance between, having win now mentality and like maybe for that game or that specific instance, I make a consequence, set an example, and then maybe I don't win now or give myself a good chance to win now, but maybe I win later.
Well, you just said it. Like, I mean, and I mentioned it before, like the words matter. So whatever you say, you must do. So if you preach and teach something and you don't follow through with it, these guys are really smart.
Mm-hmm.
They're very observant, and they'll call BS on somebody very quickly. They might not even call BS. They might not ever tell you to your face, but their actions will tell you that, hey man, I don't believe in this guy because he says one thing, but then he does another thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you have values that are fundamental to your program and they're values that are fundamental to your core as a person, then when you say things, the words matter. If you say that we show up on time, if you say that making, like, I'll just use the intelligence piece, right, as an example. If, say, one of my values is to care about being intelligent,
Mm-hmm.
and someone makes a decision on a Friday or a Saturday night that is unintelligent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about basketball now. I'm talking about in life or
Life.
basketball. We could no, but we could stick to basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we have a game plan. Let's say we're competing and we have a game plan, and everybody looks me in the eyes and says that they understand the game plan, and then somebody just blatantly doesn't follow the game plan and doesn't care about it. There's going to be a consequence to that, because it A means that you didn't understand it. B, you did understand it, but you just didn't follow it when the ball got thrown up because you didn't really believe in it. Or C, you're not taking pride in your intelligence. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we all agree that this is how we think we're going to have success. So what I would do is, am I willing to, like, take, for example, someone just does something repeatedly on the court. I think there's an intervention. I think you can correct somebody in the moment, and you don't have to take them off the floor. But that's personality based, and it is like some kids can just take in information while they're running back and hear what you say and think about it and process it and be like, okay, yeah, cool. Some kids need to be removed from the floor to slow down their brain, to just stop and focus and listen, and then they get another opportunity. And then some guys, they just don't care.
Yeah.
And
Or they care about other things.
right.
Or back to what you were saying, they care but in a different way, and that could be misinterpreted if it's not a way that can be well perceived by the whole team and not addressed. Like you said, like everybody cares differently.
But here's the thing too that you have to understand is that that's going to reveal itself in
Big
practice.
time.
In
Mhm.
practice, I don't worry about games so much. Like game, that's the one thing for me when like we talk about like definitions of like winning, losing. Like I care more about practice than I do about the games. And I know a lot of people don't like they don't believe that, and they like you make that statement and they go BS. Like everybody cares about the games. I don't know, man. I get 5 practices a week. I only get 2 games, right? Like the 5 practices for a coach where you can stop it and you can correct and teach. Like that's everything for a coach, right? That knows that all I basically do is I prepare you, and then on Friday the ball gets thrown up, and like yeah, we make adjustments and whatever, right? But like most of the work is being done beforehand. So if somebody doesn't listen or there's conflict or whatever the case may be, where they just flat out don't get it, you can stop and correct and teach and practice. And the way they respond to it, do they do it better? Do they ask questions to want to learn and get better at it? Or do they just kind of say, yeah, I got you, and then make the same mistake over and over and over again in practice? I mean, what do you think I'm going to do? Do you think I'm going to trust that person? Do you think I'm going to play that person significant time? Like the reality is like it reveals itself in practice. The game is the game. When we all could have like predicted that, okay, Johnny doesn't know how to cover a cross screen, and we all, and he couldn't guard it all week in practice. And no matter how many times we corrected him, I'm not going to snap on Johnny and freak out or discipline him in a game because he didn't do it all week in practice.
Yeah, we've seen it.
Like we know, like why is anybody upset? Like we all know. And until Johnny cares enough to get better at it,
Yeah.
and we see the changes in practice every day, why would anybody get upset in a game?
Right.
Like now we're not being humans. Now we're not being logical. We're not using our brains. We're like associating our emotions. Johnny messing up, but it's like, why you didn't say anything to Johnny all week in practice? None of you cared to correct him in practice. I corrected him the whole time, but nobody cared. Nobody else like. So now you care because there's a crowd and there's a game and a score, and that's where winning matters, because players think that winning only happens when there's a scoreboard and there's a crowd.
Right.
If you can teach your guys that it's an everyday thing, and that winning is not about a score, it's about, am I doing my best? Am I doing my best? Like, am I being perfect in what I'm doing? It's like, again, the crazy analogy is this, man. How do you tell a good parent from a bad parent? The way their kids behave.
Oh yeah.
You tell a good parent from a bad parent.
I'm gonna steal all this stuff for my season. Holy!
I'm just saying, like, how do you tell though? Like, here's the thing: kid goes to the store, kid's crying, like fighting, like I want this, I want that. I'm grabbing everything. Everybody is gonna like. Here's the reality: a lot of parents, they probably snap on their kid. They probably, hey, put that back. Da, 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 da. But that's because they're doing the emotional thing, because there's people watching, and I'm in a grocery store, I'm in a store, and everybody's watching me, so I'm gonna correct my child. Your kid's not going to grab things that don't belong to him if you correct them every day in your household. But you're also correcting the kid because now you're in a grocery store and people are watching, and you don't want people to think that you're a bad parent. So now you're parenting. And I understand I'm coming across as pretty ignorant right now because I don't have children of my own. However, I taught for a long time and I worked with a lot of kids. And if you're only going to try to fix things or care about things when people are watching because it's the right thing to do, you're going to get exposed. Yeah. So to your question about like the conflict piece a little bit and like just dealing with players, I think from my belief, it's just me. I think you do that every day in practice. You do that every day in film session. You do that every day in meetings. You do that every day when you walk by them in the hallway and you see the way that they're moving in a hallway and you're like, hey, why are you here? You have class in 6 minutes. Why are you still here? Like getting guys to understand that my job in your 4-year university career is to care about everything you do. And it's annoying, and you're not going to like me. There's days you will love me, but ultimately you will always know that I care and that I'm looking out for your best interest. And so I don't just do it because people are watching. I do it every single day. And you want to create that environment where everybody cares every single day
Big time.
about it. And then that's what it is, right? Don't just do it when people are watching.
Yeah. No, that's huge. When you're talking about, we talked about players, but you also have to build a staff too. And staff, we're talking about assistant coaches, it might be support staff, it might be, it might be the athletic director, just a support staff in general, right? How important is it that everybody gives the same message to the players?
It's everything. Being good at something and wanting a program to be good requires a lot of different people helping. And in order for it to get good and for people to be good and the program to be good, the message has to be consistent. There cannot be sidebar conversations. There cannot be confusion. I know we live in a world now where even just me saying this is going to make people go, ooh, but it's what I believe is I think that seeing things in black and white sometimes is a very important thing when you're a leader of an organization, a program, a business. Seeing black and white is not a bad thing. Living your whole life in that gray area, the in between, like, wow, some days it's like this and some days it's like that. I personally think that if you can build a staff and a program where everybody knows exactly what the standards are, the expectations are, and you live every day to those standards where it's like, yes, no, right, wrong, good, bad. I think what you find is you build consistency and you build habits and you don't live in a, well, maybe good enough.
Right.
Like the gray area, and please, I hope I'm not coming across a certain way. Like the gray area is an important area in terms of empathy. To understand where someone is coming from, you very much have to live in a gray area because circumstances are circumstances.
And I'm gonna back you up on this. I think I'm gonna back you up on the gray area part because that resonates with me completely. I think the gray area a lot of times is understood and will not be misconstrued if that relationship is built properly. Like if we actually have conversations and we actually know that everybody is here, and we know that, for instance, the gray area is a one-off kind of thing, it's easy for us to have that interaction and understand where everybody's coming from. But again, communication, everybody's got to be on that same page about what is black and what is white.
That's right. Like I'll use this example. Somebody walks in late for film, right? You're doing a film session, and the policy, the standard, the expectation that you have is that we care and we show up on time because details matter. Let's say Johnny's getting it bad here today, but Johnny walks in and Johnny comes in 7 minutes late for film, but the words matter. And I say to people, there's going to be not a consequence, but like if you're late for film, just don't come in. Don't come in. But then Johnny's waiting for me at my office after film. So film ends, wraps up, I go and he's sitting there. And I go, hey, what's up? And he goes, hey, I was going to be late for film. I know you'd rather me not show up if I'm going to be late. So I just didn't come in. Yep, for sure. But coach, can I talk to you for a second? Sure. So you sit down in the office and he tells you, hey, I just found out that my cousin passed away. I'm having a rough day. Well, the black and white of it was he understood the expectation of I show up on time or I don't show up. Maintains the culture. The gray area is the conversation that happens after. The gray area is understanding that there are circumstances in life that say, I was late because I was dealing with something. Or, coach, my car broke down. I had car trouble this morning. If you send me a message letting me know you have car trouble, we're good.
Yeah, we've all had car troubles. Those are not fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you have car trouble, All right, cool, man. You have car trouble. Great. I'll take your word for it because I'm gonna assume you're being an honest human being, right? You have car trouble every other week. Well, get yourself a new car, right? So, but my thing is it's like what I'm trying to say is this: the black and the white of it is very important because it sets the standards. So, to your question about staff, administration, all that stuff, the people that you are bringing into your program, people you're going to be working with every single day, they have to understand what your black and your whites are: good, bad, yes, no, wrong, right, and try your best to avoid the gray. If there's a gray area, I think it's best to have those conversations one-on-one when you're not sure. I think to have the out in the open gray conversations with people opens up too many what ifs. Oh, but. And I think that that's where a culture can find itself in a vicious cycle where everybody, these guys are smart. The moment they see, oh, so if you basically just like engage in dialogue, you can kind of get your way. Sometimes dialogue is best reserved, man, for like what we're doing one-on-one.
And I'm gonna hit you more. Even sometimes, like, man, because like you said, very smart, very smart. So like, if I can talk to, I'll give you an example. If I could talk to the athletic trainer, yo, man, coach tripping, man, he's not the athletic trainer. Like, yeah, you're right. That fuels kind of like that conversation. Same thing with assistant coaches. If the assistant coach doesn't have, or the assistant coach has his own agenda, right? A player can go to the assistant coach and be like, man, see, coach subbing me out. And then after he's like, man, you're right, man. I wouldn't have subbed you out. And then that kind of fuels it. And then that's where, you know,
Yep. And
I've seen it all.
I've seen it as well, man. And that's a tough one. I'll be honest, that is always a tough one. I like to think that I'm not a tough guy to play for or a tough guy to work with, but I do have strong convictions and I do have very strong beliefs. And one of them is the message has to be consistent. And because I was an assistant coach at Brock, I can tell you firsthand, sometimes players want to come to assistant coaches. Willie and I had such an open dialogue about it. There's certain guys that Willie was closer with. There's certain guys that were closer with me, right? But the messaging was always the same. The messaging, like Willie and I had such a strong relationship that everybody knew you're not going to be able to come and talk to me about some stuff about Willie because you know the message I'm going to say to you is the exact same message that Willie would say. And I think to some extent, you have to find the right people to do that. I think it's trial and error. I think you get it wrong a lot of the time. And sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's just as simple as luck. But that's where I will say this. At the level that I'm at now and in the position that I'm in now, one of the reasons you asked me earlier, like, what do I take from my past experiences and put into this new position at this level? This is also my profession. And so everything is done professionally and everything is done from a business perspective. What I mean by that is this is now a certain level of coaching. So if I don't like what somebody says, it is my job, my actual job now to tell this person, this is the message. This is how we deal with this. This is not a conversation for you to have with an athlete. That comes through me. If you aren't sure, come to me. That's the difference of it, is there's no more gray area. And again, I know some people will interpret that as like controlling or this, that. It's not that. What it is program, it's culture. And any really good leader absolutely is open-minded to taking in people's opinions, because I'm not the expert at everything. I'm just not. Like I know that I'm a relatively, I think, like a humble person. Like I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And I try to listen to what people have to say. But one thing that I don't really compromise on, because I think it's a very slippery slope, is when you just allow people who don't know what your values are or don't take the time to learn them, start having sidebar conversations, your culture can go. And that goes for players too. Sometimes you think like some guys that are leaders in the team can sometimes be the toughest ones because they don't really get it. But the guys turn to them for advice, but they're the ones that don't get it. And so you got to be careful. Staff, players, myself, like all of us have to have the same message.
For sure.
Yeah.
Holy, this was great. This was great. Coach Brandon Edwards, the new head coach at Laurentian University. So actually, I got one last question I got to ask you.
Yeah, man. I'm having fun.
just based on who you are and how you establish culture now, who is the most influential person that you think influence your current coaching philosophy?
I'd probably go. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, but
Yeah.
the most,
Mhm.
I'd probably say, I'd honestly say it was probably my principal, the
Mm.
person I worked for as a teacher. He was a former football coach, former football player. He, to some extent, I feel like he ran his school as a football team to some extent. He
Mm.
recruited teachers he wanted. He would, mentor. He would, get an older teacher to mentor a new coming teacher. Like, so there was a little bit of a
Nice.
rookie vet kind of thing. He pushed me, man, he was the one that got me into coaching to some extent. And I'm forever grateful for that. But just his humility, um, his ability to stand in a room and garner respect by saying very little, by being, let's be honest, by being the smartest person in the room but acting like he knew nothing, because he was just that kind of a humble person. I think he had the greatest impact on me. To His name is George Singfield. Great guy, like just an unbelievable guy. Has impacted so many people, and I can honestly say my father was the one who first mentioned the coaching piece. But then I remember standing in my principal's office. It makes me sound like I'm a kid, but as a teacher, and him saying to me, I'm going to lose you, one day. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said it to me when I was like 25 years old. He's like, I'm going to lose you one day. He's like, because I think you're going to get an opportunity to coach at a university one day. And, that's 12 years ago. So,
Full
you know,
circle.
yeah, man. So like he had a pretty big impact on me as well. And he's a great dude, a great man.
Love that. Coach Brandon Edwards, I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's your busy schedule. I know you're out here. You got a couple things you got to finalize and whatnot. Where can people find you? Just keep up with what's going on at your new situation.
Yeah, so anybody that wants to follow us, myself personally, I'm on Instagram. I have Twitter as well, but more so Instagram at Coach Bedwards, B Edwards, so at Coach Bedwards. Anybody that wants to follow Laurentian men's basketball, I'm just taking a look at it. The IG for it is LU Voyageurs MBB on Instagram. So again, LU Voyageurs MBB is in men's basketball. Got great content that we're putting up on there now. And on Twitter as well, Voyageurs MBB. So we're on Twitter, we're on IG. Yeah, if you see any value in following my nonsense, feel free to give me a follow on IG.
I appreciate you. I've been a fan for this is like 6 years now. I'm excited to see what you're going to have going on into your next step. So we'll be keeping up. Appreciate you, my friend. Wish you the
Appreciate
best
you
of
as
luck in your
well.
new situation.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.